Well, you know, I had a guy a few years ago scared me. It's the worst I've ever been scared in the past is when those bull sharks got bad. You know how they were really bad for about a week. We couldn't even hardly land the fish, and they would just 5 or 6 of them would get on every tarpon you hooked, and you just couldn't get your tarpon away from them, and they would just like piranhas tearing the water up. And then they settled down for 4 or 5 days, and we didn't have any problem with them. And I had some guys on the boat, had a really good day, and one of the guys was drinking a few beers, and we caught this nice big tarpon, got him to the boat, held him in the wire, and they were all hooping and hollering, and then I popped him loose and let him go, and I turned to walk back up to the helm, and I heard something. I turned around and looked back, and nothing but the guy's feet. The guy dove out of the boat to touch his tarpon as he swam away, and this was on a hill tide, an afternoon, hard outgoing tide. Guy was out.
That's really smart.
The guy was real athletic. You know, he was a good swimmer, real athletic, but he had a few beers and he was hot from catching that fish. And he just decided he was going to jump in and touch that tarpon, and it scared me to death because I went back to the stern of the boat and waited on him because he dove deep, and I had to sit there and wait and wait and wait, and he finally came up, you know, and he shook his head like woo-hoo, and I'm like, get your back in this boat. If you had any idea the sharks, and when I said sharks, his eyes got that big, and he just like egg beater right back to the boat.
I remember that night. I remember that night. You and I and Freddie took a whole bunch of people out from the Pink. We lost Nancy Belle-Isles.
Oh, right, coming around the big dock, yeah.
And you had to.
I did.
Somebody fell out of the boat.
I grabbed his. I grabbed his belt. He leaned over and grabbed her.
Yeah, and where I grabbed her was.
Yeah, we'd have been national news though if that guy had done that a week before, because we hadn't even talked about sharks and never even had come up in the conversation. He didn't know anything about how many sharks are out there. But had he done that the week before and tried to dove in there just as that bunch of sharks hit him, he'd have been toast.
Were we in the old Lacey then?
We were.
Yeah.
We'd all come in from fishing.
Yeah.
Freddie and I come in from
It was
fishing.
a little bit choppy going around that dock.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people. We had about 12 people on that boat.
Who was the old Lacey? Whose boat was that?
When I got it was
Francis
Carl
Gillett,
Fletcher.
didn't it?
Francis
Yeah, it
Gillett.
started out as the Mary.
Mary,
And then Johnny
Okay.
Down bought it.
There was a sister boat too, wasn't there?
So it started out as
Well,
Mary, and they
bunch
changed the
of
name of it
boats.
to the Lacey.
No, my daddy changed it to Lacey.
Okay.
Yeah.
When he owned it. So.
And Carl Fletch owned it when I got it, and it was pretty much a derelict. And that was the first boat I ran. I never forget. I got a putty knife and dug all that rotten wood out and bondoed the whole side of the cabin.
Oh yeah,
Painted
when
it
I
I was next to you back in the bayou. Back there.
Yeah. But you talking about the man diving overboard? I had the president of Chrysler Corporation out there, and there was about 5 or 6 boats, and he was drunk. And the first thing he did, I had that open boat. He grabbed a hold of that light pole and broke it. And then he sat on my ice cooler and broke it. And then, of course, back then we all smoked and stuff. So I had a carton of cigarettes on the boat. And he said, I need a cigarette. Do you have any cigarettes? And I said, yeah. And he gave me $100 for a pack of cigarettes. And then he got in my chair. I said, mister, you can't sit there. I said, I have to sit there. You have to sit somewhere. Put me on another boat, he said. So I said, okay. He was drunk now. And he said, I'm going to swim over there to that boat. I said, no, you're not either. He said, well, put me on another. So I went over to my daddy. I said, Daddy, can this man get on your boat? He said, that son of a bitch ain't getting on my boat. I said, well, what can I do? And he had 2 Washington football players with him sitting back there. And he said, take him back to the dock. So I did. And when I backed in that dock, had a white water flashing over the stern. And I said, oh man, when I get back here, the football players are going to tear my ass. I looked over there, Wayne Conway standing on the dock, you know. And so when he got to the dock, he jumped his ass overboard. And he started sliding up down the pile and getting on the bait. And he was having a hell of a time. He just thought that,
I bet he was.
And he was just
Alcohol poisoning.
Well, when he got off, he fired me. He said, Captain, we no longer need your services. I said, okay. And so they walked off, and one of the football players come over to me, and he said, Captain, I'm so glad you took that son. But the next day, they took him to Dr. Fritz, And the next day he came down, he looked like a mummy.
Oh, I
All
bet.
wrapped up. He said, Captain, if I can get it back on your boat, I promise you I'll sit down and be there.
Yeah, those barnacles on those pilots will do a number on you.
And they get infested, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, immediately.
Oh man, that's painful just hearing that story. Gosh.
And what was funny about that was I had a 318 Chrysler in my boat, and I was bragging on it, you know. And he got mad about that for some reason. I don't know why, but you know, I said, as far as I'm concerned, these 318 Chryslers are good. They're kind of easy to work on and stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Best engine ever made.
Huh?
Best engine ever made.
I think so. And,
John will argue with us about
Yeah, I
that.
think that 350 was.
yeah, but he got mad about it. But he was, like I say, he was drunk.
Yeah, drinking a little bit too. There's probably a lot of stories we could tell about excess drinking out there over the years from clients.
No, I don't think there was much of that going on.
Oh no, none of that. Especially not back even at the dock.
In fact, I'm still mad at the net because I used to take Diane out on in tournaments, and she'd get her 2 or 3 of those jelly shots, and then her clothes start coming off.
Yeah.
And Nat would make damn sure she had. Every time he come by, he'd throw it back.
Dumpling's back there going, made me throw more.
Yeah.
And you know, the Chico had those wide decks on
Yeah.
it, and she'd take her clothes off and lay on. I said, Diane, you have to put you some clothes on. She said, why? I said, because every time I start to throw my bait overboard, it lands in somebody else's boat that makes some clothes to me.
You just say you're cramping your style, you couldn't even fish. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they burn the paint off the side of my boat here.
Bo Smith used to say, he'd call them the behindies. He'd see those girls, and every time there'd be a girl up on the bow of the boats or whatever, they'd talk about Bo. He didn't care where his lines were or anything, he'd be following that behindy every time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one about Bo. We was fishing a party. There was 5 boats in it, and I can't remember who was the head of the party, but we was all out there fishing, and they had brought this girl in from the Red Fox or whatever over in.
Oh yeah.
And
A professional woman?
she was on
Cancer.
Bo Smith's boat, and you know everything was fine. It's a big steel corporation, and Bo said that she asked about going up, laying up on top, and said hour went by, no big deal, and he said that he got to noticing things getting a little crowded around him, so he went up for another drift. Got crowded again. And he said next thing he knowed, he was fishing over by the fishing pier.
Yeah.
And he said directly she stepped down off the top, and she was up there and she took her top off. He heard the radio playing. Well, she was up there without no top on, up there dancing, and all the boats was just following her go around.
That happened to me one time. You talking about starting guiding out of Miller? I think I was about 14 or 15 years old, and somebody hired me with one of the big old twin engine. You know, you could do that then, and I got out in the pass, and the 2 girls disappeared, and they went up on the bow. Well, they had a dinghy up on the bow, you know, and all of a sudden, that big old boat, I said, I'm too crowded in here with it. I'm a little bit nervous in here with all this. So I kept eating over. I was almost over on the big shows, and these people were still coming over with me. And I looked up there. I finally went up, walked up there, and both of them were laying on the bow of that boat naked. And I couldn't see them with the dinghy there, you know. But the funniest story about that is that time Richard Coleman, we had that Chrysler outfit, and of course, we always had too many boats or not enough boats, you know. And so he and I were still at the dock, and everybody else had gone fishing. And so here comes these 2 men in a big old long limousine, you know. And Richard, I had the Buccaneer then, and he said, he told those men, he said, now if you want to catch fish, you better go in that little open boat. He said, that they catch fish now. You want to go on that little open boat.
But Richard was wanting to go home.
Richard, no, he was going on the gravy train, you
Oh.
know. And so, that guy said, okay, no problem, we'll do that. About that time, here comes another big old limousine, and it had 3 gorgeous girls in it, and one of them was for the captain. And Rich, when they walked on the dock, Richard told that man, he said, you know, to come to think of it, it might be a little rough out there for that little boat.
Yeah, it changed his tune.
Yeah, but you know what happened? The men went on Richard's boat and the women went on mine.
Was that all that happened?
That was all that happened.
All right, we did hear. All right. Oh, so anyway, well, let's set those.
Richard fished the Ingleharps for years.
Yeah.
His clients, and
Yeah,
then Dickie
yeah.
took that over. His clients were the main ones were the Ingleharp family.
Yeah. Now we were talking about drags on the guy that had the tightest drags I've ever seen is Dickie to this day. If he
Dickie
gets out,
Coleman?
Dickie Coleman doesn't
He
have
just,
any
he just
drag.
clutch it in gear and go.
Yeah, he doesn't have a drag on his
Fish with
reels.
jump.
It's
He-
locked
No,
down.
he just pulled it. He
It's
pulled it
locked
right
down. I don't know
yeah.
how the heck, but he is locked down. It's not going to get past 80 feet.
Well,
away
see,
from his
he
boat.
started off with us, and those old timers, I guarantee you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had Dwayne Futch one day jumped on my boat at Whitney's because guys would give me a hard time about something, fish got away or something like that. And they say, your drags aren't tight enough. Well, my drags are tight as everybody else's. Well, Dwayne Futch was down there at the marina. He jumped on my boat, said, "Let me see." And I'm
He
like,
probably
"Oh."
wasn't even fishing, was he?
No, he wasn't fishing. He was working on boats, but he said, "Oh, let me jump on here." And he jumped on my boat, and I'm thinking to myself, and now it's really going to hit the fan because there ain't no way they're going to be tight enough for him. I passed. He said, "I passed." He said, "Proud moment ever in the dock." He said, "I passed."
I did that to you one day too.
Well, you always get after me for everything.
Oh, I know, bro. You're lucky peasant.
Well, just kind of recap a little bit, when you stop and think about some of those old time guys, I'm thinking about there was a whole group of the Futches,
Yeah.
and they not only, like the Knight brothers, they didn't only fish, they worked on boats.
And they were good.
And Raymond Lowe was another one who was
Cecil
a really
Dooley.
good, Cecil Dooley, they were big.
Yeah, Dwayne was always known
They-
for doing
known for
transoms and
Well, you know that boat Billy Halfshot had that he bought from my daddy?
which one? The Nancy Sue?
Yeah. Well, it had the steep decks on it, And Uncle Suge, Suge Fudge, he screwed those things down, and I seen him take a little old chisel and chisel that wood up and screw it down and put that wood back over. You never even noticed it was a.
Yeah.
There was a whole group there, and then there was the Knight brothers. It was Harold and Johns and Francis
And George.
and George. And
Eugene didn't
and
fish
then,
much, did
but
he?
these are the older generation. Then we
Did when
had
he
Johns
was
and Eugene
And then my
He didn't
grandfather.
like to fish. He'd
Yeah.
rather be in the boatyard.
and Thomas Knight and Brian Knight now, and of course we got
Yeah.
Eric, the younger generation.
Well, Thomas Lowe was around a lot in those days too.
I'm just
wasn't
going
he?
through the Knights.
Right.
But
I just
Thomas
happened to think.
started what, 70s, 80s?
Thomas
80s?
started out mating with Paul
Thomas
Velasquez because Paul Velasquez had broke his arm.
That was Ronnie.
Thomas started first and then Ronnie.
Ronnie's
Ron-
younger.
Yeah, I know Ronnie was younger, but
Yeah.
I thought Ronnie was the one that he owned the open boat first.
Yeah, I
and
know
then
he owned
sold
it,
to Thomas.
but he started mating before he owned that boat. He started mating with Paul Velasquez.
I got you.
You're talking
They
about
do a
Thomas.
lot of
You're talking about
And then
Thomas
when
Knight?
he-
Low.
Oh, Thomas Lowe.
And then
yeah.
when he started,
Ronnie never fished, did he?
Yeah.
Did he fish? He
Then
wasn't
when
fishing
he
when I
started, Thomas got his own boat stuff. Ronnie.
We did a lot of them bait fish, weren't they? More like they started out, they not only made it, or didn't Ronnie bait fish a lot?
Yeah.
In the beginning, he was
He might have.
squirrel fishing and.
But I bought all my bait from Eugene.
I did Eugene.
I don't know how Eugene could keep up back in the day.
I'm telling you what, that was something else. And I never had to ask for bait, but I had Wayne Conway crabbing for me, so, and they'd just go by and put the crabbing in.
Well, you were supplying Mark Futch and yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, oh, I've done that all my life.
Wayne was your brother-in-law, right?
Huh?
Wayne, your brother-in-law?
Yeah,
Yeah. And he'd catch the crabs, and then Eugene catch the crawfish. And then my daddy, I don't know who caught the mutt minnow, but I know my daddy started that crap, and that's how I met Finger O'Bannon. Was they'd run down to Fort Myers Beach. You know what that meant, right? They'd run down to Fort Myers Beach and get 100 dozen mutt minnows or whatever, and bring. Well, they on the way back they'd get right there at Captiva and go into Chadwick's, because he had that little bar and restaurant there. And then guess who had to run the boat home in after that?
Yeah.
And they didn't have those channel markers either.
Right. Did Fingers guide back in those days? Was he a
Fingers
guide?
did. I had to teach him about the green and red markers, and he guided for the people, the real estate people over there in Cape Coral.
Ogden Phipps.
Yeah, he was the Phipps. Yeah.
He ran the Phipps.
Another one of them old guys, remember Belton
I
Johnson?
didn't know that
Yeah,
Fingers ever
yeah.
determined
And
it.
Nancy
Yeah, I
Jones.
didn't either. That's why I was wondering. Now, Phil O'Bannon, his son, is
Phil
a
O'Bannon,
big
yeah, but-
fly fishing guide, but he never really fished the
Fingers
hat.
O'Bannon was pretty famous down in the Fort
yeah.
Myers Beach
Yeah,
area.
all
Yeah,
the
he was
Everglades
from like
City.
Cabbage Key South, right?
Yeah.
Now,
And,
but Phil never fished the pass, did he?
No. He might fly fish.
Yeah, Phil's always been a fly guy.
I had to.
And snook fishing.
Snook, yeah.
When Fingers first came down here, I had he worked for that real estate people, and I was mating for him, and he didn't know how to put the green and red markers on. He didn't know how to twist the lead wire, and so they had a group out there, and dumbass me now. Fingers and them had to go, and so did all the men. But they had some women with them, and so I had to take them out. And I thought I wasn't had to go out that afternoon, but that man told me to take the girls out there, and I didn't have a clue about it. And so we coming in the bayou, and I was trying to flirt with them, and I said, "When you gonna come back and see me?" She said, "When I find another live one." I said, oh.
Jeez.
Well, I have a question. Where'd you get that visor with the fake hair?
How's
Is
it
that
with
one of those
hair?
fake hair visors?
Well, this is because like all the years of dumpling giving me a hard time, it turned my blonde hair
Cracked your
white.
hair.
Now that's what's the deal. I mean, I caught a hard time from dumpling for years.
Well, see, I'm the
You caught a hard time from that.
I know it, and I've tried to give you your space too.
I caught all that hell from those old times.
Oh yeah, it rolls downhill, doesn't it?
I think that was a little worse back then.
Yeah, I don't think I had it as bad as maybe you had it. That's for sure.
And I want to tell you, it didn't take them long for somebody to holler over the side at you either.
Oh,
Say,
didn't
"Get that fish out of here."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd even get mad if you was up too close to their stern.
You're damn right.
I mean,
think you
forget
know
about
that.
short drifting on you.
Yeah,
Get too
yeah.
close.
Yeah. It's still that way to an extent out there. It's not quite as tough, but it's still people make their own space out there. Some people. There's guides out there. I just don't like to be drifting around. I'll make sure I can go somewhere else, and I'm sure they're the same way with me. They don't like the way I fish, or you fish differently, or your boat lays differently than somebody else's boat.
My problem is out there now is all those young guys. I don't know them. I don't know.
Right.
They're talking on the radio, and I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
So I don't, and like, somebody be coming drunk like you're gonna run over my fish, and I don't know who the hell it is. I can't.
Yeah, can't call them on the radio if you do. Yeah. It's still a pretty tight-knit community out there, the local pass guides.
It's pretty friendly.
It's, there's not too much that goes on out there, it's not all that much
But it's
different from back in the day, I guess.
It's different.
It's-
I was gonna ask you, how do you feel like it's different? Well, now we've got, people have web pages, they've got TripAdvisor, they've got a concierge at the inn, they've got, different, all kinds of different ways, communication with the cell phones and all, it is still word
Well,
of
the
mouth.
cell
You still
phones
got
definitely changed it all, because especially for the guys that don't fish the pass, the guys that fish the harbor and the beaches and all that used to have to go find those fish on their own. Now it's like you know, they got a group of 6 or 7 guys, and they cover everything, and whoever runs across the
jig
fish.
guys, yeah.
Yeah, they're on the
You see them
phone.
talk on the phone, all of a sudden they pack up.
Yeah.
You know,
And I
used to be classic example is on these hill tides. Nobody ever used to fish for them past their buoy. You know, now they stay with those fish until they're plumb out of sight to the west. You know, because they're on that cell phone and they can stay on top of them.
And
So
I
it's
remember when
changed.
the people came down here to get away from the telephone.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well,
But you still, don't you all still have generations still coming though, of some of the families that for the years that they're still, or they caught that first tarpon and they passed it on?
Oh, yeah.
And now we're getting the kids to
Well,
fish, and that one of the most.
we all, I guarantee you,
things.
we all have stories of taking kids fishing.
Yeah.
And now, even though I'm probably the youngest of this crowd of guys, they're bringing me their kids now. And I know
Yeah.
you all
Yeah.
have got that, and even grandkids.
But, you know,
Because,
what's embarrassing about that though is you run into somebody and they'll tell their friend, he caught me my first tarpon hour, and I don't know who in hell.
yeah, it's hard to, you know what, I get that same thing, and people will come up and say, do you remember when I caught this tarpon?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, and surprisingly, sometimes you can remember
Yeah,
specific
but-
people catching fish, but a lot of the times you can't.
But you have to act like that you
Oh, yeah.
remember, you know.
Yeah, but I have a lot of clients now who fished with me when they were junior high school or whatever, and now they're all bringing their kids because they remembered how fun it was and how important it was for them to catch that first tarpon, and they want to make sure their kids have that experience. So
And it's still the thrill of
It
that,
is.
that
Well-
bite. I mean, I've fished forever and I don't get to fish as much as I like to, but still to me, that bite, you know, you first
Yeah.
get that first bite and that run, that still is just exciting.
Somebody else that I think about, you know, when we talk about the fishing and the fish chowder, especially when we talk about who made the best fish chowder.
Yeah.
The one thing I got to say, there's nobody will dispute your mama and your sister made the best brownies.
They were my mama's,
Pink elephant brownie,
my
yeah.
mama's recipe from the
Yeah,
pink
Well, I
elephant.
know that's where they were
Yeah,
making
but they
my-
made them later, yeah, they were making them and then we don't
That
make, yeah.
brownie and that
People
butterscotch
fight
brownie,
over
the
it, yeah,
butterscotch
people would
brownie.
fight- and they look ugly, you know, but people would fight over it. And I remember Dee used to bring when they had those spaghetti dinners or whatever they had there, and Dee would bring those brownies, and I'd look around there to get one, and all the other desserts were there, but those brownies were gone.
That's because we would never let them out of the kitchen. We would keep them in the kitchen. She'd bring those brownies in, we'd eat them all.
We used to take that tray of brownies was at the original Pink Elephant. That was one of the things that I did before I was old enough to wait tables or anything, is I carried the complimentary tray around to each table, and it was complimentary, and it was butterscotch brownies and chocolate brownies that were homemade, and every time you need to make them, and you passed them around, and you didn't people just didn't take one, and you go around. I mean, we might do 100 people that one night or whatever happened. That was complimentary, and Dr. Wright was known for, and he'd tell the story many times. He was known for stuffing his pockets with them, and he'd tell me, "Come back around now, Betsy. I didn't get one of those brownies."
That was at the
They
Pink
were,
Elephant.
Pink Elephant.
I remember eating down there, and Susie Fugate waited on me, and Jackie Silcox, and
Yeah.
you passing the brownies out, and then the shrimp was the crab bisque was so good.
Crab bisque.
Crab bisque was so
And
good.
then
Well,
the
you should-
sauteed shrimp was one of the big, and pompano.
You should have been there when my mama was there. You was there.
We could do a whole nother. We could do a whole nother video conference of your mama. You know?
well, before we get to it, is there anything up? We're kind of
Are
up
we
through
back
the.
on running again?
Yeah, we're kind of up through like the 70s. So is anything else we want to say about like the 70s? And we'll call it a night here and
We're
come
in
back
that,
and talk
yeah.
from the 80s on another time. But anything with Harper started those
We
tournaments?
kind of got into the 80s. We were in the 80s too.
A little bit, yeah. But
He started those
like
tournaments.
77 or something like that, I think was his first
Yeah,
one.
probably that first one, Lonnie. 77.
Well, there was some tournaments before that, though. Harbor Heights used to run a tournament here in the 1960s.
And
out of
Uzeppa
here.
Island had one too,
And
didn't it?
Uzeppa had the Isaac
And,
Walton.
and they had the
And Eastern Airlines did that, because they had that plaque at the Pink Elephant. And
And then
was on
Mr.
there with
Shanley.
Lonnie Foot.
Yeah, there were tournaments that were held here. My
Yeah,
grandparents actually.
Jack took us into the modern era with tournaments.
Right.
Yeah, Jack turned it into the other. That was when the marina changed.
But
When we
now-
had the big marina after Matt's Marina burned.
The first women's club tournament, now that,
Women's International.
yeah, that was
International
something
Women's.
else. Now, that was,
Now, there was some
Elsie
anglers
used to
there.
fish there.
Well, that was it, and that was a regular thing. That was the International Women's Tournament, and they fished so many. They could only fish 2 per boat, and
changed
it
every
was
day.
catch and release, wasn't it? Too.
Yeah.
And they fished. Was it a week's tournament or 2 weeks or something? That it
Yeah.
ran longer.
Yeah,
And
and-
Pat Miller and Elsie Bracken was in it,
Yeah,
and
Miss McGinnis.
Jack Gilbert's
Miss
wife.
Cortella.
Miss McGinnis from up
Yeah.
Tampa Shore.
Oh, yeah, that,
Miss
That was-
Elsie.
And that was they traveled all over. That
that-
wasn't just here.
They also has either 30 or 50-pound line. that
They-
they
it was- I
And they
think it
used
was 30.
monofilament line.
Yeah.
Yeah. and-
Yeah, they had rules of line class and
And
all
we
that
had,
sort of thing, yeah.
we had to learn to mark that monofilament line with a marker.
fingernail
That was
polish.
fun.
Yeah.
I did that for years with Mrs.
We
Clark.
still had, yeah, you had her
You know,
deal
also
until
take a
recently,
twist on it,
right?
tie dental floss.
Last few years.
Yeah, it's probably been, when I quit guiding, I fished her for another 5-6
Yeah.
years.
But I think it's time probably tonight for us to wrap it up.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank each of you for coming and hope we can get it together again and do another series. This could go
Yeah.
on for
Yeah, there's
many,
lots of
many
stories, and there's some other guys we can get in here another time to tell their versions of some of these stories too.
Well, that's the reason my boat named Deja Vu.
Right, that's right. All right, well, with reminder, everybody's Captain Nat Italiano, Captain John Knight Jr., Captain Bill Dumplin Wheeler, right?
Captain Bill.
Yeah, Captain Sandy Melvin, and Betsy Joyner, Boca Grande Historical Society, November 1st, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you.